Well, good evening and welcome to another edition of the mayoral Q&A with Greater Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham. I'm Michael Gaffney. I'm a newsreader for Capital Heart and Smooth radio stations in Manchester, and I'm going to be putting some questions to Andy this evening. Really appreciate you all taking the time to be here on such a hot evening. Glorious out there. And thank you as well to everyone who's following this online. You can get involved on social media if you've got your own questions to raise, and they'll pop up here on my tablet. So do get involved if you want to. Andy, I think we'll start though with something that's dominated the headlines over the last few days and particularly over the last 24 hours, which is the enormous fire up on Saddleworth Moor. Firefighters grafting like Trojans through the night last night into today. There's been an announcement this afternoon that the military are going to get involved to help. What's happening there?
Yeah, well, obviously it's been a major incident. If you can smell smoke, don't worry, it's me and Michael. We've been there today, and I'm sure Dawn and Tony have. So you can see it, can't you? It's smoke is covering large parts of Greater Manchester, but in the area affected, it can be very difficult. We've got the interim chief fire officer here tonight, and also Tony Hunter from the Greater Manchester Fire and Rescue Service. That's just through both of them. I'd just like to say, I'm sure on everyone's behalf, the work that frontline firefighters have been doing at the scene. You saw it today, Michael. It's incredible, isn't it? As ever, they are working flat out and working really hard. Because for those who don't know, it's not a fire where it's easy to get water to the flames. Its geography means that it's difficult terrain, and obviously they're having to do some very arduous beating of the fire in all of the kit up the hillside. It's not easy at all, and I think we all send them our appreciation this evening. Yes, I think this is no reflection on the Greater Manchester Fire and Rescue Service or Greater Manchester Police. The fire is challenging, and it's spread in a number of directions, so hence the request this afternoon for assistance that has gone into the Home Office. That's for military assistance. People shouldn't be unduly alarmed by that. It's just the need for extra support to help frontline firefighters, but also potentially with the carriage of specialist kit to the scene, particularly a high-pressure pump. So that's why the request has gone in. If it's approved, and obviously we wait to hear, we would have reinforcements, hopefully, with us from first thing tomorrow. So that's the latest state of play. I don't know whether Tony or Dawn want to add anything to that, but I think that's the situation as we've got it. But I think it's fair to say this is the largest. There have been fires on the moors before, but I think this is the largest example that anybody can remember.
Dawn Docks, you're the Chief Fire Officer. If I could bring you in on this. We've got this major incident unfolding. You're likely to have firefighters there for the next few days if it doesn't rain. How can you make sure that that doesn't impact on a negative way on the firefighting capability around the rest of Greater Manchester, like here in Trafford?
And I think that's what I'd just like to agree with what the Mayor has said about the fantastic work that our firefighters have done and the dedication that they have shown out on the moors. We've actually put in place a lot of other measures to make sure that we have additional resources. So we have put in place a recall to duty, which means that off-duty firefighters are coming back in and they are taking the place of their obviously exhausted colleagues. We've also called upon other fire and rescue services in the region, and they are providing us with resources as well. And of course, once we've exhausted all that, then the next port of call is the military, and our request has gone in. So yes, it is challenging. It is very challenging, but it's what fire and rescue services are trained to do, and no doubt we will get it under control within hours, if not days. But it isn't helping the fact that the weather is just this fine. Everybody else loves it, but for us, it is a real challenge.
Well, there you go. That's the latest on that from two people who definitely know. We'll delve into some of your questions now, and I'm going to start with one to do with health and social care. It seems like the last few years, every year, we've had this winter crisis in the NHS. So this question says, what do you see as being the solutions necessary to manage that increasing demand for health and social care associated with our ageing population, particularly with regards to community health and social care and primary care?
Well, we're in the right place, aren't we, to have this discussion, because 1 week tomorrow will be the 70th anniversary of the National Health Service, inaugurated in this borough, what was Park Hospital, now Trafford General. So the NHS needs, I think, to be debated at this moment in time, because I think my feeling is, and I've said this before, we're still trying to rise to 21st century challenges with a 20th century medical treatment model of care. And I've long argued, to answer your question, that the solution to the challenges we face now is to bring social care, I believe, fully within the NHS. And that process is underway in Greater Manchester. We're increasingly moving to one commissioning voice at local level. So 9 of our 10 local government chief executives are also the accountable officer for the CCG now. So as you can see, we're beginning to bring these two systems together. For me, it's quite simple. We will know that we've got a 21st century NHS when it supports people with dementia as well as it currently treats cancer. And if we're honest in our heart of hearts, for those of us who love the NHS, as most of us I'm sure do, we're some way from that. You cannot rise to the challenge of the ageing society by allowing older people to fail at home, get stuck in a hospital bed for days and then weeks, and then go downhill in hospital. It's not a vision of support for the 21st century. And I think we'd be being true to Nye Bevan's vision if we now and then said, right, we go on a step and we bring social care in to this amazing system called the National Health Service, and I think that would be the best way to mark the 70th anniversary.
We've got a question here.
Oh, thank you. I'm Vice Chair of a carers charity that operates in 6 of the Greater Manchester boroughs. Recently there was a report from the National Home Care Association saying that the minimum level at which you should pay providers as commissioners for them to be able to operate is £18 and a penny an hour. This isn't being met throughout the Greater Manchester boroughs. And as a supplementary to that, I mean, you've got Salford saying we're a living wage employer, but they're commissioning at a rate which means that providers can't pay a living wage to the people who are doing the work for them. So my final point, sorry, it's 3 points here.
They're good points.
is that your Health and Social Care Committee is entirely commissioners. So you're seeing it through the prism of finance and the prism of the NHS. Social care goes deeper than that. It's lonely old people whose only human contact can be with a carer. It is, as you rightly say, people with dementia. So I was just suggesting that one of the things you could do, if you are integrating the two, considering that the Chancellor's autumn statement said nothing on social care, Theresa May's magic £20 billion said nothing on social care, is to actually involve providers as well as commissioners in coming to a solution. This is not just a feel good because you've consulted widely, it's so you can get better decisions. And so my point to you, or my question to you is, please involve providers as well as commissioners in your plans. Thank you.
Oh, that's a very good point. And we do. Maybe we should do more, but we do. There is a providers board that I go to from time to time. But I think your first point is the right point. You can't solve social care just through the prism of local government and the funding settlement that they've got. They have been cut in recent years, and our Greater Manchester councils have been cut. I mean, we've got the leader of Trafford Council, new leader of Trafford Council here tonight, Councillor Andrew Weston. I think he'd be able to back me up in saying this, in that the budget just isn't there, and trying to rise to the pressure from a dwindling budget is impossible. So what do you do about that? This is the point I'm making. I think you can only solve social care by consolidating it with the NHS and then reforming the way the funding works within the NHS. I would like to, as Mayor, move away from the system that we have in the NHS, which basically pays hospitals for every person who comes through the door, because that kind of reinforces that medical treatment model, which isn't actually right for people with dementia. What I'm saying is, for those people who are identified as having ongoing needs, we need to move to a year of care approach to their care, which would consolidate the budget for acute care, primary care and social care, and the NHS should be paid accordingly. And the way that would work would mean that for the first time in its history, the NHS would have an incentive to support people at home and keep them out of hospital rather than treat them in a hospital bed. And it's a change that we have asked for from Greater Manchester. We've asked the government for permission to opt out of their activity tariff, or payment by results as it's called. And we want to use our powers of devolution to create an entirely new model of support, which would be the NHS working in partnership with trusted and good home care providers to pioneer a very different way of doing things. We haven't had a positive answer yet from them, but it won't stop us asking.
I mean, Andrew, if I could bring you in here, leader of Trafford Council, like all local authorities up and down the country have had to deal with year after year of cuts. If the current situation with regards to the social care that you're providing doesn't change, what's going to be the situation in Trafford?
Well, I think increasingly councils are very worried. We've lost over £100 million per year from our budget since 2010. But I think the position that we're in is that we're increasingly worried about our ability to deliver statutory services moving forward. So social care in particular is a real point of potential crisis for us in the future. If I can just comment also on the initial question about the winter crisis. And these are conversations that I'm really keen that we start to have early in Trafford, because we talk a lot about delayed transfers of care and people being stuck in hospital for longer than they need to be. But actually we need to be talking about how we stop people who don't need to be in hospital in the first place from getting there. And so that's things like good neighbour schemes with perhaps a couple of roving clinicians, making sure that it's only those people that absolutely need to be in hospital that are there. And actually, if it's loneliness or people who just need general practitioner support, then we can really look to address the delayed transfer of care issue by keeping people out of hospital altogether.
I think Andrew's absolutely right about that. I think there is some really innovative work going on in Greater Manchester to rethink home care. I went to see a scheme in Ashton and Makerfield, Wigan, a week ago, and they've turned it into what they're calling a well-being team. And rather than using the 15-minute visit just to make a cup of tea and whatever else, they're paying people to have longer visits, to actually then knock on the doors of the neighbours and say, when I'm not here, do you think you could help Mr. X? Because he wants to go to church on a Sunday. Is there somebody in the street who could take him? To build social capital around people. And that's a very different way of looking at a system that has basically become a bit of a conveyor belt. So there is innovative thinking going on. I think if we're honest, we can only stem the tide at the moment. We need the government to come in with more money for the NHS, and they've indicated they may do that. But also, we need to see now a substantial reform of the funding of social care that I've been calling for years. Because if we don't reform social care, the collapse of social care will in the end drag the NHS down with it. And it really frustrates me to hear the media always just saying NHS funding, and they never really kind of progress the whole demand for change in social care. But we will lead that call from Greater Manchester for sure.
Surely there's a broader thing, how we deal with an ageing population as a society here though too, because we are having more and more people of a senior age. Certain diseases like dementia and Alzheimer's become more commonplace as a result. How do we build a society where those people can, in every way, continue to live a fulfilled life?
Absolutely right. And we have been given age-friendly status by the World Health Organization in recognition of some of the very pioneering work that's going on in Greater Manchester. There's been an ageing hub in Manchester for some time where we've kind of looked at age-friendly communities and how do you kind of really change the way a whole place works to support people. So we're doing some really groundbreaking thinking there. There's a scheme called the Take a Seat campaign. I don't know if people know it, but businesses who are taking part in it, it began in Levenshulme, that if they're prepared to let older people use their toilets and have a seat for a little while and get a drink of water, they put a sign in their window. Simple, but absolutely transformative, because what traps a lot of older people in their home is their fear of going out, not being able to find a toilet, and then kind of fearing the embarrassment that would bring. So some of it is simple. We talk about massive funding solutions, and that, of course, is part of it. But it's about building a culture of age friendliness, and I'm pleased to say, we're ahead of most on that. In the long run, though, you've got to break out of a system that refuses to pay a few pounds in people's homes on decent home care, but seems happy to spend thousands of pounds on long-term hospitalisation. You know, you will never get the care we all want for our own parents or indeed for ourselves from a system that breaks care down into 15-minute slots, that doesn't pay people the minimum wage because they don't get the travel time between the 15-minute slots. It will never, ever, ever deliver what we would all want. And how can we tolerate a society that says the people that look after somebody else's mum or dad or somebody else's brother or sister are basically on the, you know, that we value that as much as, you know, fast food or, you know, somebody working in a retail, you know, it's a high calling, isn't it, to look after other people's relatives? And surely, as a society, we should be recognising that and rewarding and valuing people as such.
A question here.
Thank you. My name is Marcia Hutchinson. I'm the director of Migrant Union, and there is another 70th anniversary this weekend. As well as it being the 70th anniversary of the NHS, it's the 70th anniversary of the Windrush generation. And the two are not unlinked. The home care workers we've been talking about, a large proportion of them are migrants and people like my family who came from the Caribbean to work in the NHS. It saddens me to see that people are not acknowledging the contribution of migrants, both from the Commonwealth and from the EU, in the NHS, and they are overrepresented as home care workers. I came to the last question time a month ago, Andy, and I asked you, what are you doing about Windrush? And you said, candidly, I haven't done anything, I put my hand up, I will do more. I'm here a month later, I've checked online, I haven't seen anything. I might be wrong, but I haven't seen that you've done anything. And this is a really important anniversary. I think it's easy for people to ignore the contribution of migrants to the NHS. If we all went home tomorrow, there would be no NHS. I think it's important. You shouldn't be talking about one without the other. It's not an accident. When the NHS was planned, it was clear that you couldn't set up an entire service in a few years without borrowing doctors, nurses, healthcare workers from the Commonwealth. People were called, they came. 60 years later, when it's time to claim their pensions, people are being deported. So I'd like to see an acknowledgement of the link between the NHS's 70th anniversary and the Windrush 70th anniversary, and I'll maybe have a chat with you afterwards about how you can support work around Windrush. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. You know, I was thinking of you recently because I went to a major event at Manchester Central, which was celebrating the 70th anniversary of both of those things. It was the start of the NHS Confederation conference, and I did give a speech making all of the points that you've just made, and I was hoping very much that you were noticing it somewhere on social media, but obviously not. But it was an amazing event, really. It was a phenomenal event of the kind of which I've not been to in a long time, because you know, it was a kind of joyous kind of, but also quite, you know, almost quite defiant as well at the same time. And I'll make sure you've got the details of it. But we've also, as Greater Manchester Health and Social Care Partnership, there's an event taking place this weekend, I believe, that's a celebration of both. I think it's Alexandra Park. I could be wrong, but it's coming soon. And I've done a video for that, which I'll also point you to. I couldn't agree with you more. It's the best health service in the world, and it's been built by people from all around the world, and we asked them to come and do it. And this country is going to go very badly wrong if it starts giving out the message that we look, you know, as though we're not appreciative of that. You know, this country is built on that reputation for fairness and for appreciation and sort of always seeing the contribution of others. And it looks like we're turning inwards to the world, doesn't it, at the moment? And, you know, people from the outside were thinking, what has happened to them when they see this Windrush scandal alongside the 70th anniversary? It looks like the country's changed. I don't think it has changed. I think some in politics and some in Westminster have changed, but I don't think the country's changed. The vast majority of British people are absolutely deeply grateful to the people like your parents who came here and built this wonderful NHS of ours.
We've got two questions in the aisle here. We'll take them both one after the other, and then Andy can respond to them both. And we'll start with you, just because you sat closer to me.
Hi, yeah, I've got a question leading on from that, which is, are you concerned about the disproportionate use of joint enterprise to criminalise black and minority ethnic young people in certain parts of Greater Manchester at the moment?
And the gentleman behind you as well. Do you want to just grab the microphone?
Ian, do you want to?
Could you just tell me why Virgin can run parts of the NHS and make a profit? He's not in it just for the fun of it, but we can't run the NHS at a non-profit, and that money what he's making, put it back into the NHS. Could you answer that for me, please?
Yeah.
Deal with that one first, because then I've got something that will link off the back of the second question.
Of the joint enterprise question. Yeah. So I'll probably bring Deputy Chief Constable Ian Pilling in on the first question as well. I'll say something and then bring Ian in. But on your point, well, I totally agree with you. I was the first person in the Labour government, as was, to break with the policy of inviting more and more people into the NHS. I introduced a policy in 2009 called NHS Preferred Provider, public NHS first. And it was controversial at the time, but I've long believed that the money motive is incompatible with medicine. And if you listen to Nye Bevan's speeches that are being played on the radio at the moment, he was quite clear about that as well. It doesn't work. I think outsourcing hasn't worked in so many other industries, but it will work least, in my view, in the NHS. And I'll tell you why. There's a whole host of reasons, not least the unethical side of cherry picking and then profit making out of care. But there's another more kind of technical reason, which goes back to the question about home care and integration. If you run a system that contracts every bit of the service out, you end up with a fragmented landscape where you've got ever more providers on the pitch dealing with one person, and the ability then coordinate their care becomes ever more impossible. I actually favour the opposite. I think you get better care the more that you've got one team around the person that feels part of the same team, and actually the public NHS team. And that's the way I've always thought about the NHS. And actually, I came to a point in my own government where I had to stand up and say, look, I don't agree with what you're doing anymore. I will always resist privatisation of the NHS. As long as I do this job, I don't want to see any further privatisation of the NHS in Greater Manchester.
And regarding...
Yeah, and this is, I want to bring Ian in because it is a very, the police have a view on it that maybe, it needs to be heard. From my point of view, I understand what you're saying. And I think for those who don't know, this is where people who are involved in maybe a gang incident where they may not be the person who actually did the main crime, if you like, but were kind of very much part of what led to it and the whipping up of the situation. And it's a joint enterprise. However, there have been cases that have been really contested where, some people say people on the fringes were unfairly swept up and imprisoned. So I very much do have a concern about it. I was on record, I think, at this question time a year ago saying that I would support a review of it. I remember Ian Hopkins, the Chief Constable, came back with a slightly counter view, because obviously from the policing point of view, they would see a strong justification. And I think, Ian, do you mind if I ask you to...
Thanks for who asked the question, sorry, I couldn't see. Thanks for raising it. It causes real concern with our communities. And because of that, it's a concern for us. That's the first thing I'll say. And more than happy to have the debate, because this sort of thing we need to discuss, we need to get it in the open. So thanks for the question. That's the first thing. Clearly, when crimes occur, we do an investigation, and we do not make the law. We apply the law as it exists. Any charging decisions that are taken by the CPS. And that's not me passing the buck, that is just the way that this works. The police gather the evidence, they'll put a file to the CPS, the Crown Prosecution Service, and they will make a decision around charging. And there have been some high-profile cases in Greater Manchester where joint enterprise charges have been authorised and people have been convicted. There's been a change in the guidance from the courts as regards when joint enterprise should and shouldn't be used, which has meant it can be used in less occasions. It has been tightened up, for want of a better word, and that has resulted in some cases being reviewed. But, and this isn't meant to sound twee, if it's a concern to you and a concern to the community, it's a concern to me. That's not to say we're using it improperly, because I don't think we are, but we need to talk about it and have a discussion and at least, even if we disagree, understand why we're using it in certain circumstances.
Well, let's have that discussion. You've got a response. Do you want to just wait for the microphone to get to you?
Are you waiting for this one? Choose that one. I'll do it. Back in a minute to it.
Hi, Mr. Burnham. I spoke to you last year.
Yeah, I remember, yeah.
You very kindly said to contact you individually. Did several times and never got anywhere. I think Bev Hughes might have spoke to Lucy Powell, but I never got any feedback from that meeting. My son was involved in one of the recent John and Case prizes, and my concern is the gang narrative. I totally agree, you know, you've got to do the law. I'm a law-abiding citizen. My son's got a life sentence, 20 years. He has to serve on the word gang. Nothing else. I've been through everything. It's a word. My concern is it's being used a lot. Your opening statement was the gang. You can't tar everybody the same. One size really doesn't fit all.
No, I get that.
I ask again if I can have just a few moments of your time. I'm not asking for no. You can't give us a miracle, but I'd like to know what you can actually do to help us going forward. You might know we're part of NGPA and also GENG with the national campaign. Any time that you can lend to it would be fantastic. And if any input from anyone else would be fantastic. Would you be able to meet with myself or the other families?
I will definitely do that. And I think the Deputy Mayor was here when this last came up, and I think I had left it to the Deputy Mayor to take
I've never
forward.
got any feedback. I've been waiting. It's been a year.
Don't quite know what, you know, but anyway, but yes is the answer.
Oh,
and,
thank you.
you know, let's have a discussion. And,
Are you sure now? Because I've
I'm
waited a year. She waited a
it's
month.
on camera.
I waited a year.
There's about 100 people here. No, honestly, I'm absolutely sure.
Okay,
I
thank you very
am,
much.
you know, I don't know the details of the individual
Oh, yeah,
case.
yeah.
I'm prepared to look at them.
Yeah.
I am on record as having had concerns when I was Shadow Home Secretary about joint enterprise, and I had given some support for a review, and as Ian has indicated, I think there has been some tightening, as Ian described
That's
it.
no comfort to me and my family that are suffering. That tightening up, it seems to be happening now in more recent cases that are coming through. I'm seeing how the charging point's been different. So my concern is charge appropriately and not lazily.
Yeah.
Because you can't use the word gang to convict young, black, mixed race, Asian children. This is what you're doing with the word. It's just the word gang.
Yeah.
That's all it's
And
taking.
that immediately puts a label, if you like.
It's
or
a
maybe,
label,
yeah.
basically. They're not even presenting evidence of a gang. They're just saying, oh, they like grime. They like this specific outfit. That's a gang. No, it's not. Okay. It's far from a gang. You know, they take him to court as a drug gang. The judge says, no drug gang. Then it turns into an urban street gang. During the trial, they changed the name of the gang 3 times. There's a lot of concerns around this case. Okay?
We'll have a
I'll
meeting.
meet with you and we'll speak.
We'll have a meeting.
Okay,
we will.
We've got another question that actually links into elements of this. Harry Stopes, are you here this evening? Harry Stopes?
For Harry, reports for The Guardian. He's asked, what specifically are you doing in Greater Manchester in response to the David Lamb review of racial bias in the criminal justice system? So it seems to be a bit of a pattern.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a government piece of work underway at the moment, Ian. I think I'm right in saying I don't want to, you know, kind of pass it away from us, but I think we're waiting, I think, for the formal government response to the Lammy review at the moment. Again, have I got that right, Ian?
Again, no, you're right
Thanks
to
for
raise
your question,
it.
Harry.
Yeah, I mean, thanks for the question. This is important to us because right through the criminal justice system, well, not right through, but in most parts, there's disproportionality. Right from our stop and search, where you are more likely to be stopped and searched if you are black. Now, that proportionality has improved massively, but until we get to the point where we can say that it is equal, then we won't be satisfied. And again, more than happy to have the debate. This is something that we see, as Andy said, we know it exists through David Lammy's report. What we need to understand is why and what we can do in Greater Manchester to remove that disproportionality. More than happy to have the discussion.
In my dealings, I mean, I only find that Greater Manchester Police will be self-challenging on this whole question. It's a very different police force than I think the one some of us remember in the 1980s under a previous chief constable. It's not in that place anywhere at all. And I think I've always found Chief Constable and his deputy to be very challenging of themselves and of the force on this whole question. And it's one where you can never say, oh, you know, you've always got to kind of keep looking as to whether or not we've got things right. And I've only ever found people willing to do that because it is absolutely a concern for myself and the Deputy Mayor.
I mean, how specifically do you hold the senior officers at GMP to account and make sure that the right processes are in place to ensure justice? What do you do?
It's my job. So I'm the Police and Crime Commissioner, but I delegate my functions on a daily basis to the Deputy Mayor. But we both, I mean, we will speak regularly to the Chief Constable, to Ian, to other senior officers, and we will sometimes raise challenging issues because that's our job. And I think they'll probably say that we don't hold back, you know, but we do it in a constructive way. So that is our role. That's what we've been set up to do. At the end of the day, we've got to get the most safety we can for the Greater Manchester public, but in a way that is fair to every single citizen of Greater Manchester. That's the balance we've always got to strike, and that's what we do try and strike. But you know, we will often have honest conversations, but you know, at the end of the day, we want a police force, and so does the Chief Constable and the Deputy, in terms of, you know, being the best police force we can have, and that's something we're always, all of us together, working towards.
Right, I've got a bit of a gear shift now, if you'll excuse the pun, but Matthew Connolly, are you here?
Sorry. This isn't intended as a sort of chip it up and you nod it in, Andy, but the
way I'm playing football at the moment, I'd probably nod it wide, actually.
The news today about B-lines was particularly welcome, although I have great concerns about Transport for Greater Manchester being able to deliver it, or parts of it. What can you tell us about the plans specifically for Stretford and Chester Road about making this a safe or safer, or at least not dangerous place for cyclists to use? We've had Trafford Council put this scheme outside here that you'll have walked around, which has just created more danger, to be honest. It's absolutely terrible. Transport for Greater Manchester can't even connect the electronics up for a project that's a month, the civil work's been done, and we're waiting a month for them to connect the buttons up. So this is about you connecting things up and getting them to get things going. I really welcome the proposals of B-lines, making cycling safer throughout Greater Manchester. I think it's brilliant. I like the investment that you put in. But have you got anything specific down here for the children and the young adults and the older people who want to get fit, who want to be less of a drain on the NHS, who want to make a commitment to the environment by not driving the cars, but actually are scared of their life going along here?
Well, no, thanks for your question. I'm going to bring Andrew in on the local element particularly. But just to explain to everybody, in case you've not had a chance to see it today, Chris Boardman has produced his blueprint, effectively, for world-class, safe, segregated cycling, but also walking facilities across Greater Manchester. And the logic of this is called B-lines. Good name, you know, but what he's trying to say is we need to create new safe routes that might use a quiet road here, a bit of off-road, you know, a towpath, or kind of a bit of an old railway there or whatever. And then once they do get into the main roads coming to Manchester, then we have more segregated space there. So these B-lines are kind of connecting sort of different bits of infrastructure, and it's quite ingenious, to be honest. And we've put a lot of money behind it. I've put £160 million behind it over the next 4 years. You talk about Transport for Greater Manchester. I mean, I brought Chris in a year ago, and his team have been kind of really working around the whole, you know, they've been doing amazing work. But to be fair to TFGM, they've been facilitating and supporting them. So, you know, the team has been kind of driving it, supported by TFGM. And Chris is going to stay engaged. You know, he's not going anywhere. He's not delivering the plan and then going. He's now going to help us with the with the delivery. So it's actually, I'd really recommend it to everybody. They've put the maps out there today so you can see your own community and what they're proposing. But it's not going to be done too. The whole premise of this is, tell us what you think. Have we got this right? And we're prepared to change to make it right, because it's going to be communities that own these B-lines. And we want to make sure that we do get them right. On the specific local scheme, I know that Chris's team have taken a look, I think, at it, and I think Andrew might be better placed to say something about that, or Bob, yeah.
Yes, so just very briefly, we are underway at the moment with the first phase of the Stretford Cycleway, which is a 3.2 kilometre stretch of land on which we are delivering segregated cycleways, improved cycle markings, etc., etc. The aim of this, and the aim of B-lines more generally from a cycling perspective, is to create an environment where a competent 12-year-old can cycle safely, and I think that's a really good ambition. And you're absolutely right that when the changes were made to the A56, there was a video that did the rounds on social media that revealed how harrowing that was as a cycling route for people using bikes to commute up and down the A56. It is only the first phase. The second phase so the first phase is working sort of Stretford Road, Talbot Road area. The second phase will go all the way up to West Point at Trafford Bar. So we're in early stages at the moment, but I think that it will have a really radical impact on cycling safety. As I say, it's primarily initially around improving the road markings and making sure that we've got properly segregated cycleways, but we are very much aware of the impact that the sort of route is having on the extent to which cyclists feel safe, and we're really keen to make all necessary changes so that people ultimately consider cycling as a safe, accessible form of transport and therefore their first choice.
I mean, we had a headline last week that the air in Greater Manchester is so polluted. It's taken 6 months off your life, 6 months off my life, 6 months off everyone's life in the room. Cycling will be good for some people, but surely we need a modal shift across all transport.
But but it will be good for everybody if we get some people cycling, because the biggest cause of polluted air is traffic congestion. So we just need to get the place moving a bit more, and then everybody will benefit, because when the traffic's moving more freely, the air pollution goes down. And I don't need to tell any of you about it, because you live in one of the areas where we have an issue with poor air quality. So getting a few people cycling actually benefits everybody, because it helps us start to clean up the air. And the saddest thing about this air quality debate is as ever, it's the poorest kids in the poorest communities who are breathing in the most polluted air. And it's a massive issue, in my view, of health inequality and health injustice. Why is it, just because of their postcode, that they get to breathe in illegal air? So I'm really passionate about this. And people have said to me, oh, you're giving too much money to cycling. I had this budget given to me by the government in the budget last year. I thought, well, how can I do something that benefits every man, woman and child in all 10 of our boroughs, rather than just spending it all on a little extension to Metrolink or a kind of new service over in one area. Chris's plan is about helping benefiting every borough with the simple infrastructure that helps us all live our daily lives. And the logic here, just to so everyone knows, the B-Line's idea is to set a standard for what should be done. So there's a consistent standard across Greater Manchester. Breaking away from this thing of a few white lines in this borough and a green path in this one, we're trying to get some consistency to our provision. And then the second thing is, councils like Andrews will only be able, this is going to be a challenge fund, the 160 million, and they'll be able to access it to add to what they were going to spend anyway, as long as they're building to the standard. So you see where we're coming from? So we've tried to bring some logic to the whole thing. And I hope we've managed to do that. I just think the simplest answer to your question is, if you give people space on the pavement, Chris Boardman talks about a double buggy test. If you've got space for people to use the pavement, particularly people who are in wheelchairs or with prams, and to answer Andrew's point, if you've got segregated cycle provision that means a 12-year-old could use it without their parents kind of worrying out of their minds, then you know you've got the quality to get the behaviour change that you talk about. And look around the world, look at London, where they built it, people started cycling. Look at Holland. 50% of kids cycle to school in Holland, 2% here. Surely we can do a bit better than that.
But you mentioned congestion, and in the here and now, plenty of us are still in our cars. And Matt Richardson's got in touch online, so thank you, Matt. He raises the point that down the M62 in Liverpool, to get the traffic flowing a bit better, they've actually got rid of certain bus lanes. When you're rethinking things, would you look at getting rid of certain infrastructure?
Well, I put forward a plan based on a big consultation we had last year around congestion, and we've put forward some innovative new ideas, because as far as I'm concerned, we've got to make it easy for people to change how they commute, to change their behaviour. That's the only way we're going to do this. It's like a deal, isn't it? If we do this, will you be prepared to change that? You know, rather than us saying that we've got a plan for congestion and we're going to solve it and go back to that whole debate about the congestion charge, well, no, we've kind of drawn a line under that. I've put forward some new ideas, so I'll give you a couple of them. One is, we've suggested that companies who offer people a flexible start time to the working day, so let people start work, let's say, between any time between 7 and 10, which means they'll leave work at a different time, they can benefit from some subsidised TFGM or Metrolink offers. So you kind of try and encourage companies to, because we've got a very traditional working day here. It's very 9 to 5. The roads are very full, 7:30 to 9, and then from 5 to 6:30. And we just need to kind of just free it up a little bit. At half term, it feels very different, doesn't it? I think we all know that. But Bob Morris from TFGM would confirm this. The drop in traffic during half term is just 6%. 6% drop in traffic leads to a massive different feeling. So we just need to think of a few ways of kind of reducing the number of cars. And to pick up your point about bus lanes, we do want to get people on public transport. And if the buses are getting stuck in the traffic as well, that's not going to help get people out of the cars and onto the bus. However, I have asked TFGM to pilot the idea of car sharing in bus lanes. So if people are commuting with, let's say, 3 or 4 people in a car, maybe that they then get permission to use the bus lane. I.e., if you change your behaviour, i.e. you car share, then you get the benefit of using the resource. For me, just to free up the bus lanes, I don't think that would solve our congestion problem.
We've got a couple of questions. Gentleman here and the lady here. We'll take them both. Start with you, please.
Yeah, first of all, I'm very pleased about the B lines, and also hearing about what I'm hearing about air pollution, how important that is. On one level, I can understand we've got a problem in terms of finance and how to spend the money. What concerns me is that we do seem to spend far too much time talking about how much things cost and not actually strengthening the case for how much you get in return for that cost. For example, people accept, I don't personally, people accept HS2 or third runway Heathrow or Crossrail as being beneficial, I think, primarily for London. That's beside the point. The reason for the support is because people say we will get so much more back in terms of various economic and other benefits. If I can just pinpoint Stretford, which is where we are, and this particular point, right in the centre of Stretford, we've got here outside, if you want to cross this road, the other side, you've got to cross 10 lanes of traffic. The previous council told us we should be grateful. They spent nearly £2 million doing that and putting a few benches in. Now, that is not going to help anything. The cycle lanes, I would love to think they're going to benefit, but they're not going to benefit while you've got that much traffic coming through the middle of a town centre. This town centre is suffering. It has been suffering for a long time. Now, my next point is going to go down like a lead balloon, because I've mentioned it with 1 or 2 Labour councillors before. Stretford needs a tunnel underneath it. The A56 needs to go in tunnel. That's the only way you're going to get a safe junction here. You're going to improve air pollution, because this is probably the worst place for air pollution anywhere in Stretford, I think. It's a massive, massive junction. You can, in terms of benefits, you create a whole lot of new space at ground level you can develop. You've got land for landscaping. You bring the 2 sides of Stretford together, so you improve the town centre. Now, I would like to see somebody looking at the benefits of that scheme and saying, right, that's what we need to do. If we're really serious about solving air pollution, if we're really serious about making things safe for cyclists along the A56, and getting buses along the A56 quicker. We need a tunnel. Now, the Labour councillors have told me, forget it, John, you're not going to get it, because nobody's got the vision. I'd like to think someone like yourself can have a vision for somewhere like Stretford and say, this is a solution.
Well, shall I just, I mean, so, well, do you mind if I just, because there's a lot, there is, you know, and I'm, you know, it goes to the heart of where we are, doesn't it? But I'm sure, you know, Andrew and I feel the same. I mean, it's why the leaders have backed me on the cycling plan. It is about what it will give back. I think it will help us reduce congestion. It will improve air quality if we get people cycling and walking more. It will help cut obesity. It will improve people's physical health. It will improve quality of life in the public realm. And actually, I use the same argument around the GMSF, the spatial framework. You know, that's why I had concerns about what was proposed in this borough. That's why I was pleased when Andrew, after his election, said that changes would be made. Protect that precious space that improves quality of life for everybody. Because actually, if you protect quality space or create quality space in the form of cycling and walking infrastructure, then you get better development around it anyway. So I buy what you're saying. On Stretford particularly, we have a town centre challenge event here, don't we? I think it's is it the end of next week? Yeah, I think it's, or the week after. It's soon anyway, isn't it? 11th, is it? So as part of my town centre challenge, Stretford is the nomination from Trafford, and we're going to come and take part. We'll have a debate about what needs to be done. I think what you're getting from the local councillors is obviously when they just look at the council budget, building a tunnel is obviously way beyond their resources. It's just that we don't have permission at our level to borrow the level of money that would enable us to do that. But I'd be prepared to take a look at it. I can see what you're saying, because it is a main road that goes right through the heart of the community, and it, as we know, it kicks out a lot of pollution. I wouldn't want, though, to give you any sort of false kind of hope that I've got a plan for a tunnel, because obviously that is major investment in one community of the kind that I don't really have available to me at the moment. But come along to the Stretford Town Centre Challenge event, and I can see you're passionate about it, and let's at least have the debate about it.
The lady here, you've been very patient. We'll just get a microphone to you. It's just so that they can hear you on the internet, on the web stream.
Sorry. Okay.
There we go.
You're concerned about air pollution. What you're doing about saving the green belts around the area and stopping people chopping trees down, which protect us from some of the pollution. I myself suffer with asthma, and my asthma over the last 5 years is really, really bad. I can't get over Edge Lane now because of the level of pollution. It's terrible. So my green belt is Turn Moss, which you'll have heard about. And what's gone on there, I didn't see you stepping in to do anything about it. And I'm sorry if people are fed up about it, but...
No, it's a fair question.
It's about all the green belt, not just
the only thing I've got to be careful of in this job is not giving you the impression wrongly that I can decide everything in Greater Manchester, because I can't, and councils have a proper job to do, particularly on planning issues. The thing I do have some control about is the Greater Manchester Spatial Framework, because I have to present that plan and get consent for it from the 10 leaders. So individual planning applications like Turn Moss wasn't really for me to get involved, because then I'd be getting involved in planning applications in which I have no ability to get involved. The spatial framework is different. And as I said, nobody was more pleased than me when the changes were announced after the local elections. I think they were the right changes. I said they were the right changes in the mayoral election. And I'm hopeful that when you see the revised plan, it will be a lot better. I don't want you to think, though, there won't be still difficult decisions, because there will be, because we need to build more homes in the next 20 years, and we're under pressure to do so from the government. But I can say to you that the radical rewrite that I promised is underway. And we are working now to get a plan that, is still a challenge and will still be something of a compromise, but you will see it when it comes through is radically different from the one you saw 18 months ago.
And am I right in saying it's been delayed now till autumn?
Sorry?
The spatial framework.
Been delayed?
Yeah.
Well, we've not made a decision on that yet. I'll just give you the actual factual answer to that, because I know it matters to a lot of people, and I don't want anyone to think that we're, kind of deciding it all behind closed doors. About 2 weeks ago, the Office for National Statistics, I think I've got this right, I don't want to get the wrong body, but I think it was them, issued new figures around population growth and therefore housing growth. And they've revised it downwards. So I don't think anybody in Greater Manchester would thank me for just ignoring that and sort of ploughing on the old figures. In my view, it's always right to take our time to get this plan right, because we're going to be stuck with it for a long time when it finally gets agreed, if and when it finally gets agreed. I hope it will be. But the issue is for the Greater Manchester Combined Authority on Friday. I will actually, from the chair, be saying I think we should delay, because we've got new figures. They take the housing need figures down. It would be pretty daft, it seems to me, for us to say, oh no, we said July and we're going to go out on the old figures. Personally, I think that isn't a sensible thing to do. But we had also, though, got the converse thing that some people are saying, oh, you keep moving it, you know, what's going wrong? And then some people might say, well, another delay looks like it's a mess. It isn't a mess, actually. But I can understand why people might say that we're just delaying it because we can't agree it. It's not that. It's simply that these new figures arrived a couple of weeks ago. So we're going to have an open debate about that on Friday. But I will personally be arguing that we delay it until September or probably September so that we can take account of this new methodology.
Also, just on that matter of housing, the 24 housing report said that in the northwest, there's no need to build on greenbelt, just brownfield sites. So are you taking that on board?
Which report was that, sorry?
It was 24 housing.
Okay, well, I'll look it up. I'm not sure I have seen that recently. But
as long as you're aware of it.
I will make sure I'm aware of it, because I want to minimise. I've always said that. You know, I've launched the Town Centre Challenge that I just referred a moment ago, because I want to break out of this developer-led approach to planning where they just say, oh, we don't want to go to the town centres, we want that green field over there because it's cheaper and we'll get bigger houses and it will raise more money for us. I'm saying, no, brownfield first, town centres first. That is the land that they can go to as a priority. And I've been trying to refocus the whole thing around that kind of approach. I don't want you to think that it's easy to say no green belt anywhere, because obviously it's a real challenge given the pressure that we're under. And there still will be unpopular, difficult decisions. There's just no getting away from that. But what I hope you will see is a listening approach, as you've seen from your leader here in Trafford, a taking on board of what people were saying, and us coming back with something that reflects, if not completely, but goes some way towards what people are saying.
Well, can I just say something on a positive about it? There's phenomenal benefits to people's health that are proved to save an awful lot of money to the NHS by keeping the green space. So that needs to be looked at as well.
I agree with you. See, I completely agree with you. And that's why I really support, you were mentioning trees. And I don't think there has been an issue, isn't there, with the council's contract or the previous administration's trees contract. It's why I was saying about the green belt, you know, that we need to look again at this. Once it's gone, it's gone. And I also support very strongly what's called City of Trees. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but this is a GM-wide campaign to plant 3 million trees, one for every man, woman, child. I'm really supportive of that. We need to be greener as a city region, definitely. And I think the evidence is, as you rightly say, is clear. Give people that quality space, it improves their health, not just their physical health, their mental health as well.
On the subject of building and development and that sort of thing, Joe Sharp, if you'd like to ask your question.
Hi. I wanted to ask you what you and the council are going to do about the growing pressure on us as leaseholders to fund the replacement of the dangerous cladding on our buildings. We appreciate you agreeing to meet with us to speak about this and sending an open letter to Parliament about this, but we need to know really what the tangible actions you're going to take to basically force government, insurers, freeholders and developers to do the right thing and fund the replacement of this cladding, which is currently being passed on to us as leaseholders who just can't afford to pay it.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to start with an apology, if that's okay, because I know that people were kind of like asking for me to get involved a few weeks ago, and you might have felt that I was slow to do that. All I can say is, well, one word answer, trains is the only answer I can give to you on that. Is just I was a little bit, I can't believe Northern Rail hasn't come up, by the way, so far. Maybe it will later. But I was very, very focused on that, and obviously more recently on the fire. But I recognise the outrageous position that you're in, to be honest, as leaseholders, or indeed people who are in private rented accommodation within blocks that have illegal cladding on them. How on earth can it be your fault? Well, I don't believe for 1 second it can possibly be your fault. For those of you who don't know, the government announced recently that they would pay for dangerous cladding to be removed from social housing, registered social landlord blocks, or indeed council-owned blocks. But they had nothing to say about residents who find themselves in buildings with dangerous cladding as leaseholders, or indeed if they're in the private rented sector. So how can it be right to say, you know, we have different classes of resident? It's no fault of your own. And actually, it was a failure of the authorities and developers to stick to the regulations. And if the regulations were faulty, well, then it's the state's responsibility. So it can't possibly be your fault, and you shouldn't be asked to pay more. So we will have the meeting. I think it's next week, isn't it? You will have my wholehearted support. I will be putting everything I've got behind it in terms of helping make the case for you. I'll be doing that with the City Mayor of Salford, Paul Dennett, who is, you know, he and I have already written to the government about it. What we can discuss next week is exactly how we can build a campaign to support you. I think in the end it will be an advocacy issue. We're going to have to raise this at a national parliamentary level. People are beginning to raise it, but we need to join forces with other cities. And we need to present a united front to the government that we're not going to accept this on your behalf.
I mean, Andy, a year on, more than a year on from the Grenfell Tower fire, we have these buildings in Manchester, in Salford, that are dangerous. They've got cladding still a
It's
year
unbelievable,
on.
I know. You know, so we conducted a review through, we had a high-rise task force which we set up very early after Grenfell. And it went around all of our blocks, and so we got a clear picture of everything. And as I say, we've had some help to deal with some of the problem, but it still leaves the problem for people who are leaseholders in buildings where freeholders are just waving away their responsibilities, or for people who are in private rented apartments in flats. And it just cannot possibly be right, because it is not, you know, when everybody bought those leasehold flats, or when anybody rented a flat under you know, the private rented arrangement, how could they have possibly known that what was on the building was illegal or was dangerous? They were entitled to take it on trust that the right regulations and processes have been followed. So I can't believe that the government announced it and said, oh, we'll help these categories of people, but these we don't care about those residents over there. It's just basically wrong. And I think you'll find there's going to be a growing campaign. To be fair, a Tory MP, I think, raised it in the House today, I think. So, yeah, and I think it should be built as such, not a kind of like a, you know, point-scoring thing. You know, there's probably culpability on all sides in many ways. Different councils of different colours, governments of different colours. The point is, it's a natural justice point. You lot cannot be left in the position where you're kind of potentially...
Sorry, Tony Hunter, Director of Prevention and Protection for Greater Manchester Fire and Rescue Service, and also a member of the High Rise Task Force supporting the Paul Dennett in that work. We did a significant amount of work on the tragedy that was Lakenhall House some years ago in London. We put a lot of time and effort with our firefighters to know our high-rise risk in Greater Manchester, which is why we were able to visit all 500 of those buildings in the very early stages of knowing what was coming out of the tragic incident in Grenfell. In terms of operational capability, we improved that on Lakenhall House, and we reviewed it again through this process. You will see, again, I'm assuming some of the residents are here, you will see fire engines on a regular basis visiting your properties. that is not to be a concern to you. That is actually to fill you full of confidence, or give you some confidence, that our firefighters know your buildings, know the risks that your buildings present, and know how to deal with an incident if we do have one there. They are obviously very open to questions, for fire safety advice, for visits within your own properties to make sure that you are safe from fire, or give you advice on that. But you can be confident the firefighters know what they're doing when they attend a high-rise incident in Greater Manchester.
We've got a gentleman at the back with a question, and yeah, just gentleman at the back.
Hi, my name's Peter Cox. I'm on the Trafford Housing Trust high-rise board, and I appreciate the guy that's talking about leaseholders and this, that and the other, but tenants are feeling trapped in high-rise blocks. We were promised when Grenfell happened that money was no object by Trafford Housing Trust, and that life was more important than anything else, but apparently 12 months later, cladding is still on the tower blocks. It looks to me, I sent a letter, an email to Kate Green, accusing Trafford Housing Trust that money was far more important than taking the cladding off, because if it rained, the insulation was ruined, and that they'd end up with an empty building, that people had used more electricity, and that it was just pointless taking it off. Even this week we were talking to housing officers, trying to get to understand the government may well ban cladding altogether. We don't know that yet. That may come up in the next couple of months. There's been no surveys, no anything into the alternative to cladding, or whether the tenants would accept the replacement of the cladding, because they're afraid of living in there. They wouldn't trust you to put cladding back that was actually any use to anybody. You know, and to go, without treading on the young lady's toes there, I would like to talk to the Chief Constable to say, I also sent an email via Kate Green to say, all the contractors involved in all this cladding, especially when we're talking about Grenfell, they're all saying, not me.
Yeah.
Not me, and let me know when it is. Maybe that's a perfect use for joint enterprise, to get them all together, say, you're guilty first, get on with it. Prove you're innocent. It's really simple. I know that joint enterprise gets a bad name and it gets, well, used or misused. I've no idea. It's never happened to me. But maybe there are good uses for it. Maybe it wouldn't have taken 30 years for you to stand at Anfield clapping Hillsborough if you'd have used joint enterprise when it first happened. Maybe the police and the people who have never been prosecuted may have been. I don't know. But maybe if they'd had to prove they were innocent, there'd have been a completely different finger pointing than it wasn't me. That's all I've got to say.
Oh, you've said it very well. And I think what's happening at the moment is, well, I've been working, because of my involvement with Hillsborough, I've been working with the Grenfell families, actually. So I see them quite regularly. And what is happening in the inquiry, just to explain, is kind of the issue that you're touching at. There's a massive blame shifting, deflecting process going on. And I think it's that inquiry, I think, that's going to bring a lot of clarity to the situation in terms of accountability and, well, we'll see anyway. But that is what you would hope will be what comes from the inquiry. Well, yeah, I see the point you're making, and it's a good one in the context that we were talking about before. I think just the bottom line is, and I think we would all just say to anybody in Greater Manchester living in a block that has cladding that poses risks, be they a leaseholder, a tenant, private rented accommodation, or in local authority, or in registered social landlord, you cannot be left in that position. And somehow we are going to have to find a solution for all of you. The point being, we don't have the resources to do that today. But, you know, we commissioned the task force for this very reason. I think Tony's just explained, we are more aware of the risks of certain buildings because of that process that we undertook. Again, it's back to the issue, isn't it? We just don't have the resources to go and take it down everywhere as much as we would want to do if we did. genuinely, this question you're raising goes to the heart of the Grenfell inquiry. That is the question that inquiry will look at, and it's looking at the potential culpability of the Royal Borough, Kensington and Chelsea versus some of the contractors, everybody. That is what that issue is looking at, that inquiry. And I think the conclusions of it will really bring some clarity, I think, to the consideration of what you're saying.
Lady at the front here has a question.
Andy wanted a question about Northern Rail. Happy to oblige.
Oh, God.
I was at the Transport Focus board meeting last week when TPE Northern Network Rail were answering questions about the chaos. Transport for the North refused to attend. Shame on them. I think we've also got a year-long strike with Northern Rail. I understand that they're the only train operating company who aren't actually in negotiations with the RNT. We've got passengers, I volunteer helping passengers. We've got passengers who are threatened with losing their jobs because they can't guarantee to. It seems to me that the excellent work that Lisa and Andy did, actually highlighting how the Department of Transport were involved, but really we need answers as to what did go wrong and what can be done to stop it happening again.
Yeah. No, it's a disgraceful state of affairs. I think the rail industry knew back in January that there was potential chaos coming. I don't think it was 2 or 3 days before. I think they knew. I think Grayling knew, and they all just, we're not responsible. This is the fragmented, privatised rail industry. They're all happy to take the profits, but then no one's responsible when the whatever hits the fan. And that's my experience of working with them in the last year has just been so frustrating. No one takes responsibility for anything. People don't stand by commitments that they've given, and you'll know that working with Transport Focus. In terms of where we go from here, I mean, I think we do need to move away from this partnership situation. I think let the North take responsibility. So we'll stand or fall whether we do a good job on it. But I think most of us now as Northern leaders feel, devolve the control to us. That's what we asked for originally, actually, and the Department for Transport refused it. We also asked for devolved control over our rail stations. They refused that. And they never gave us devolved control over Network Rail. And actually, you probably would say that they were possibly majority at fault for the chaos that came with the timetable. And who's responsible for Network Rail? The man who this week told the Today programme that he doesn't run the railways. Well, I'm afraid you do, Transport Secretary. It's your job ultimately to make sure commuters here get a fair deal. And he's woefully failed the travelling public of the north of England, in my view. And to cancel coming here on Monday because he had the big vote on Heathrow and the debate. It just says it all, doesn't it? As I've been trying to say all through this, we are invisible. Northern commuters, the pain of northern commuters is not equal to the pain of commuters in London and the southeast. And I am trying to use my voice as mayor to kind of say, well, call that out basically and say we're not putting up with that anymore. But it's a disgraceful state of affairs, no doubt about it. And I also think it makes the case for bringing the railways back under full public control.
I mean, for sure you've had a lot to say about this, but we've got this organisation, Transport for the North, sitting, waiting, it would seem, for responsibility over these areas. Do you not think that they could be a bit more aggressive pushing that with Westminster?
Well, to be honest, I lived through that experience of, I was warning about Northern Rail going into the new timetable, and then the meltdown happened when it came in. The only body that I felt was doing anything was Transport for the North. I'm not just being biased because they're a northern body. The DfT was nowhere. Transport for the North were at least discussing it, and we're trying to get things moving. So, the finger, where I'm pointing the finger is Northern Rail, obviously, Network Rail, definitely, Department for Transport, absolutely. TfN, well, they were a statutory body from April, and I don't think they had the ability, that they didn't necessarily insist on some of the elements of the franchise that caused the problem. They weren't overseeing Network Rail's engineering works because Transport for the North have no statutory responsibility over Network Rail. And so no is the answer to that question. But what I would say, give them more control. Give them more control over running the franchise and holding Network Rail to account for making sure they do their engineering works on time. At least then the North will be able to stand or fall, and we'll have to accept responsibility. On the issue on the strike, just to say, I mean, I've come to the view, and it happened at this question time last time, where a disabled passenger was at the meeting and said, look, I don't want to see guards go off the train. If in Greater Manchester we've got unstaffed train stations, my confidence in using the public transport system will go right down if that is the case. And I really thought about that. And it does bring out, these question times do actually kind of, really help. I do come in and I do listen. So I've kind of changed my view a bit, really. Not changed my view, I didn't really have a firm view, but I've kind of became more and more to say, well, actually, we do need a second person on the train. Because, we get complaints about Metrolink not having enough staff on, to kind of deal with issues around antisocial behaviour. I don't think the public would like to see trains go to a position where there was nobody else on board. So, I think they've got a case, to be honest, a strong case, the RMT. I don't think they're best pursuing it, though, by inflicting 3 days of industrial action on everybody. And I said that as well last week. We need to, as you say, get them talking to get a deal like we've seen a deal struck in other parts of the country.
Question right at the back on this.
Hi, I'm Annette, and I'm the Northwest Ambassador for the WAVE 7030 Trust. And I just wanted to thank you on behalf of George Hoskin for supporting the Trust. You understand, you had a conversation with George, didn't you?
Yeah, I did.
So what's your plans to, how are we going to move forward with George? Andy?
Okay, thank you very much. For those of you who don't know what the WAVE Trust do, they focus on the very earliest years of life, and particularly on minimising what are called adverse childhood experiences. The thinking being that if kids suffer in various ways in their very earliest years of life, they never catch up. So in Greater Manchester, we've got a whole focus of work on improving school readiness. With our 10 councils, the NHS, Greater Manchester Police, Greater Manchester Fire and Rescue, everybody, we're all saying we want to have a big drive together to ensure when kids get to reception class, they are ready to learn and they have the basic language skills and the basic social skills to be able to thrive in the school environment. Of the 39,000 or so kids who start primary school every year in Greater Manchester every September, about a third, 13,000, are not deemed to be school ready. Now, we will never build the kind of Greater Manchester I want to see unless we do something about those figures. And we've got to get that 13,000 down year after year after year. And that means focusing more on those years 0 to 4, investing more in health visitors and other professionals to support those kids, getting primary schools to take more interest in the preschool years, and building a different culture around that whole issue. And WAVE could very much be a part of that.
Yes, and collaboration is key. So we have a specialist kind of society that we meet every month. So if you could at least join us on one of the webinars, that would be fantastic. I know you're very busy, but you've been brilliant so far. We've got about 100 MPs that are backing this. So we need a few more. So we're doing really well. But thank you very much. Okay. But I also think that to get, the steering committee that you have, it's having those people with lived experience alongside the professionals, and you can hear their voice as well. I think that's really important.
Definitely. Thank you.
Talking about education for slightly older people, Neil Pye.
Hi, Neil.
I've got a question. What progress has been made in gaining further devolved powers over the adult education budgets as well as greater access to the apprenticeship levy funds in order to boost Greater Manchester's skills and training provisions?
So we're making some progress, Neil, is the answer to that. From April next year, Greater Manchester will take control of what's called the adult education budget. So that's the funding for courses for people pretty much over the age of 19. Some of that funding goes to our colleges at the moment. In future, we'll be commissioning with that budget. So progress has been made on that. On the apprenticeship levy, less progress to report. this was a new levy that was introduced on businesses. A lot of money has been collected from Greater Manchester businesses, but we're not spending it, so the money's just sitting there at the moment. And it's scandalous, to be honest, at a time when we need to be training up the next generation to deal with the challenges of Brexit, to have money sitting there that isn't going into training young people. The number of apprenticeship starts here is going down at the moment. How can that possibly be right with everything that we're kind of facing as a country? So together with the other Metro mayors, so there are 7 of us, and this, also Sadiq Khan joined us as well. We were in Liverpool a couple of weeks, and the Mayor of Liverpool City Region, Steve Rotherham, made a commitment to asked the government directly that any unspent money in the apprenticeship levy should be put under the control of mayors and combined authorities. The government hasn't said yes to that because we think they want to swipe it back to the Treasury General pot to prop up some other issue that they're trying to fund. But we will carry on making that case because, you know, we're looking at a situation here where we really need to start investing in technical qualifications for young people, and we need to get on with it and do it right now. The government are asking us to do a local industrial strategy. We keep saying, well, you can't have that without a good quality local skills strategy to support it, but we haven't yet won that argument, it would seem.
Do you think the private sector need to do more?
Well, to be fair, they are doing quite a lot because of what I just said. You know, they are putting forward a lot of money. It's just frustration is that it's sitting there not being spent. But, you know, I think we've got a big job as well because we've got a plan for skills. I don't know if you've heard me talk about this before, but we're about to put out a proposal for a UCAS-style system for apprenticeships in Greater Manchester. For those of you who don't know what that means, it's about having a single clearing system like we have for universities so that young people not on the university route get the same clarity as those that are. So when they're at secondary school, you know, in, let's say, year 9 or 10, they often can lose heart because they can't see where school is taking them. Those on the university route know exactly where they're going. But young people who want apprenticeships often find it confusing and they don't know what's out there. So we want to do something about that. I want a single system where every apprenticeship in Greater Manchester is on that system and the employers are able to say, these are the subjects we want you to take, these are the grades we expect you to get, and then young people can apply for those in the same way. And I am also working on my plan for a free bus pass for 16 to 18-year-olds. Because I think those two things, the UCAS system to raise people's ambitions, the bus pass to give them confidence they can get to those places to work or to study, will be a big game changer, in my view, in investing in the youth of Greater Manchester. I did a survey recently, or we did through the combined authority, of 300 young people in Oldham and Rochdale, and we asked them a simple question. Do you have hope for your own future? 40% couldn't answer that question positively. And honestly, if we don't do something about that, we will never deal with some of the issues around crime and antisocial behaviour, all of the challenges that we face as a society. So this is our answer. We're going to try and work to bring in this bus pass as quickly as we can. We're really kind of focusing on it at the moment, and we want to send a really simple message to every young person in Greater Manchester that we believe in you, we are going to invest in you, we are going to give you confidence that you can move to something after school. And at the moment, we don't do that enough, and we're determined to do something about it.
We've got a proper Stretford question to wind up with. Mark Sullivan.
Hi. Yeah, thanks for knowing so much about everything you talk about. It's remarkably refreshing. You're either bluffing very well or it's very impressive. I'm not used to that from politicians at the moment. Anyway, simple Stretford question. I just wanted to know what your opinion is on the plan for the UA92 campus down the road.
If I'm honest, I don't know. I've not seen the latest, plans because I know they're probably changing. They're being worked on with the council. The idea, I see something in the idea. I'll be honest. I think there's something attractive about, in some ways, responding to what I was just saying. University for young people, but without all of the extra expense that it can bring. So I can see something quite powerful in it, but it has to be right for this community. And there's the but is a big question, isn't it? And I know there were concerns about some of the original plans. So I still see something really quite kind of attractive about giving young people hope and a route into university in a way that they may find it difficult to go through the traditional way of university learning. But it has to be in a way that's right for here. Andrew, I don't know if you want to pick up on that or no? Yeah.
Because, I mean, over the last few years, we've had people who maybe weren't educational providers before get involved in that. Academy schools, not all of them have gone well. Some of them have gone belly up. Gary Neville may have won the treble, but he's never set up a university college before. So you're going to have to keep a close eye on this, surely.
Yes, I would say so. But the partner, I think, from a university side is Lancaster, I think. So there's a reputable university that was involved in the early design of it. I think Trafford College as well, and they're obviously a very, very successful, established player. Trafford Council are very close to it. So this isn't a risk, this isn't a kind of venture that has no educational expertise behind it. It does, but Andrew, I don't know if I've got it right.
Yes, so obviously we sort of inherited this project when we took control of the council in May. But like Andy, I'm quite attracted to the concept. I think it's a really good opportunity to do university differently and to attract a broader spectrum of young people into university perhaps wouldn't have looked to go otherwise. The issue there, as Andy says, is the impact that would have on Stretford and Gorse Hill, Old Trafford, and the wider community. So what we said that we would do is that we would pause and review the plans that we were still able to influence. So the agreement to lease the site to UA92 has been signed, which does mean that it's, we are full steam ahead, as it were, in terms of the university opening next September. But what's important to me is about mitigating the impact on Stretford Town Centre as residents saw it and the concerns that they have. So in terms of what we've done, the initial plans were for a 20-storey tower block on Lacey Street. That now will not happen. There will need to be, obviously a viable development on Lacey Street to help regenerate Stretford moving forward, and that may or may not include student accommodation. But what we've done and what we've been very clear about is that there are no current plans on the table. We want to come out and talk to the community in a proactive way before we move anything forward there. Stretford Town Centre more widely, there are certain things that we're still looking to do. There's £2 million worth of public realm work still to go on in Stretford. We're continuing to look at compulsory purchase of the Isoldo and the properties on Edge Lane. And it's about, for me, it's about just taking a moment to pause and reflect, see where we are up to, see what we can do in terms of, dispersing the students rather than the 20-storey tower block, and looking at the existing facilities that we've got, so perhaps office to residential conversion, and just about doing everything that we can to mitigate the concerns that residents had, because obviously they were very significant. One thing that we did link to this but separate was to put a halt to the term MOS proposals. I hope that's shown that there is a willingness on the part of the new administration to listen, but there's clearly a lot of work to do moving forward and with the community.
We're really close to time. One last question, lady in the corner. And just wait for the mic. There you go.
Say one last thing to wrap up. Yeah, thanks.
My name's Louise. I live on the Lacey Street estate on Cooper Street, and I have grave concerns about the impact it will have on my estate. It's a tiny estate. Parking, just for one thing, is limited as it is. We have parking from all over the place because people don't want to pay to park. Just one issue of parking is going to have a massive impact. Students might not be able to afford cars, but they certainly have visitors that do. I welcome change to Stretford. It needs change, it needs development, but we really need to be seriously consulted when massive impact as things like that are going to be built, and how it's going to affect my life and the lives of our kids and everybody that's growing up on that estate.
I mean, Andrew was nodding there, and I was just saying the same. I mean, I think we both feel at kind of national level and sometimes at local level, politicians of all colours at times have tried to just dictate and impose on communities. And what we're trying to do through everything that we're doing is not do to, but do with. We won't always agree on everything, but as best as you can, involve people. As I said with the Beelines thing, this is your community. You should have a proper say and see if we can work something out. And it's the same with the spatial framework. We're not just, we are trying to listen, we are trying to get things right. It's the whole way in which we're trying to build things, recognising that people, the anger, people hate it when the political system just tries to kind of bulldoze things through, and it shouldn't be like that. So I think we're both saying we can see an attraction to this proposal, but only if it's done in the right way and addresses properly the issues that you're raising.
That is all we have time for. I'm sorry we couldn't go into everything in a little bit more detail. It always feels like that, doesn't it?
Can I just say, just in closing, a massive thanks to you, by the way, Michael, because he had a long day. He was up at Saddleworth with me this morning. And
well, nowhere near as long as the firefighters.
That's true as well.
Still up there, so I'm not complaining.
No, that's true. But you were there, and it's great that you've carried on and you've done this for us tonight. I just want to thank Andrew and Bob from TFGM, Ian from the police, Dawn and Tony for being here as well. They've had a long day, but they are here, and they're obviously engaging with your questions. We've touched a lot of ground tonight, and I would definitely say there's some difficult issues and things we've got to kind of carry on debating. But B-lines is one thing that's coming through. That is a big plan, and hopefully that will make things better. We've just spoken about young people, some of the plans there. We've got the plan for the more integrated health service that we're going to be talking about next week, and I sincerely believe that Greater Manchester is going to lead the way when it comes to charting the path towards a 21st century health service. We've done the bus pass for WASPy women. We couldn't do for everybody, but we've helped those who we could afford to help, and that's made a difference for people there. I suppose the point I'm just coming to is devolution is beginning to deliver. I'm probably as frustrated as anybody. I want to do more and more quickly. But if you take an issue that's very close to my heart that's not come up tonight, homelessness, we've now got plans that are really beginning to deliver. We've got around 70 people who are now in our social impact bond who have got a home and support. These were entrenched rough sleepers going back a few months ago. And that is something that we're doing and we're leading the way on. So, I know we all want to see change and change happen more quickly. But I would just say to you, at a time when national politics isn't coming up with many answers, it's really important that we all stay engaged with this process. And I'm just so pleased, actually, to see so many of you here on what is a really hot night with other attractions on the television. The fact that you're here matters to me. It really means something to me that you're all here. I just think Greater Manchester's got a great opportunity here, if we do work in the right way, to pick up the question from the back there. Rather than us doing politics in the old way, let's meet like this, let's talk like this, let's develop plans together, debating them. Surely that's a better way of doing politics than we've done it in the last 20 or 30 years, And that's what we're all about, trying to build a healthier political culture in Greater Manchester and show that there is a better way of doing things. And I hope you can see the beginnings of all of that in what we're doing. But I can assure you I'll continue to come back and be held to account, and I will continue to pick up those causes where I need to be a champion for you, be it on kind of people in dangerous buildings, leaseholders, the whole question about joint enterprise, which has been raised again, and I will have the meeting, but also a voice for the North when it comes to transport. At the weekend, just a thought to leave you with, you might get a flavour of how the power of devolution is building. All of the leaders of the North, the Mayor in Liverpool City Region, leader of Leeds Council, Newcastle Council, other big cities, we all came together and met in Newcastle to lay our plan for the first convention of the North in September. We feel we've hit a point here where we can't just carry on with business as usual. The North needs to start getting organised, speaking with one voice, not accepting second best anymore when it comes to investment decisions. So devolution is beginning to change things. And I just want you to go away with the feeling that the more that you come to events like this, the more energy we put into this, the louder our voice will get, and the more change for the better we will get. So thank you very much indeed for coming.